Well, good evening. I shouldn't say good afternoon. It's still light out, so it confuses me sometimes. But it's great to be here for my first town hall, my first budget town hall. And I thank all of you for coming today and taking time out of your busy schedules to learn more about the process and to be able to ask your questions. And also, we're here to listen. So I've got some remarks, and I'd also want to say hello to everyone listening online tonight, and thank you all for tuning in as well. So good evening. And thank you all for joining us tonight. In just a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Director Phil Hagan from the Department of Management and Budget for his presentation. Also with us tonight is County Executive Brian Hill, to my right, who presented us with the proposed budget back in February. It's important to remember that nothing has been decided yet. We are still in the middle of the budget process and have a little over a month to go before it is adopted on May 7th. There are also public hearings on the budget on April 16th, April 17th, and April 18th for more public input on the budget. I suggest that if you are interested, that you go to the county's website to learn more about it. Obviously, there will be a lot of testimony over those few days, and so making sure that you have a place if you want to speak or have comments during that budget would be important. So there's no doubt that every budget presents us with challenges, and this year's budget is no different. As with every budget, we find ourselves trying to strike a balance of funding our core services while not overburdening our residents. This is exceptionally difficult this year with a record number of unemployment, a strong economy, and thousands of job openings throughout the region. This is further compounded by our limited ability to diversify our tax base by only seeing a return of 23 cents for every dollar income tax generated by Fairfax County residents. That context is important when speaking about the budget. In this budget, you'll see the county's commitment to funding public education, which drives our economy, all despite woeful underfunding by the state. Also in this budget is an investment in our workforce. Police officers, firefighters, EMS, and those who deliver the services that help make our quality of life what it is. That said, after the presentation, we will open the floor up to comments and questions from all of you. This is an important opportunity for all of you to share your thoughts about the budget. Again, nothing has been decided and nothing will be decided today. However, your input is an important part of the process. I want to thank you so much, and we can begin.
All right. So tonight I'm going to be going through a shorter version of the county executive's presentation that he used to present the advertised budget to the Board of Supervisors back on February 20th. Since this is a high-level overview of the budget that I'm going to be going through, I would encourage you, just as Supervisor Jimenez said, check out our website at fairfaxcounty.gov/budget. We have a lot of resources there, really details on the budget. And certainly one of the resources that I always like to point people to is within our overview volume, our advertised budget summary really goes through and itemizes every single adjustment that's in our general fund, both the additions as well as the reductions that we've proposed. So please take a look at that. But then hopping into our budget, like our budget last year, our focus this year is on stabilizing and sustaining our core services as well as on our employees. A significant portion of our overall budget is dedicated to Fairfax County Public Schools, supporting their operations. We also have a significant investment for employee pay increases as well as benefit cost increases. And then also adjustments related to our required debt service payments and support for our transportation systems, including both Metro and Connector. Really, when we just look at those first four items, schools, employee compensation, debt service, and then transportation, just those four items put us over the amount of revenue that we were going to generate at our current real estate tax rate. And so it's really based on those that the advertised budget proposed a 4-cent increase in the real estate tax rate in order to fund those items. Everything else that we've included in this budget, all other increases, are fully offset by a reduction exercise that we did over the course of last year. Really, as we were looking ahead at 2025, we realized this was going to be a difficult budget year. We challenged our agencies to come forward with some options where we could cut costs and that overall generated about $36 million in savings. We also have some revenue enhancements in there, and part of those reductions as well would be a reduction of 84 positions. I would note that we do have 42 new positions that we've proposed, so a net decrease of 42 positions. Putting it another way, as our county executive said when he presented this budget, for every position that we're recommending to create, we've recommended 2 to be abolished. So digging into our general fund revenue, this slide gives a history of our annual change in general fund revenue. Our FY 2025 revenue estimate included here, that's a 6% growth. That does assume that 4-cent increase in the real estate tax rate. Our revenue growth at the current real estate tax rate would be 3.5%. And so this next slide provides some information on some of our major revenue categories in the general fund. The general fund is primarily supported by the real estate tax. The real estate tax is about 66% of our revenue base. What we are looking at for growth in that real estate tax in FY 2025 is 6.8%, primarily based on both rising home values as well as that proposed increase in the tax rate. Next category I'll highlight here is our personal property taxes. Those are projected to increase 8.8% in FY 2025. That's after they were down 2.3% last year. This projection does assume that we are at a 100% assessment ratio on those vehicles. And then the last category I want to highlight here is investment interest. Investment interest is one that we've been talking about a lot over the past few years. Really some big changes in that category. If you look back to FY 2022, that category was only at $17 million. What we've seen since then has been, as the Federal Reserve has been increasing interest rates, we've really seen an uptick in our revenue there. So we're projecting $154 million in the current year, possibly even earning a bit more than that. But we are expecting a slight decrease in FY 2025 to $152 million. Based on what we're expecting to see with the Federal Reserve action on interest rates, we are expecting them to start making some reductions in those interest rates. Our Department of Finance is working very hard to try to lock in those rates for longer terms to make sure that we can continue to see these higher yields. And as I said, real estate is our largest revenue category, and so digging into that a little bit, when we talk about the real estate tax base and the changes from year to year, we talk about it in 2 ways. We talk about equalization, and then we talk about growth. Equalization is you owned your house last year, you own your house this year. How much is it worth from year to year when you've done nothing to it? Really just talking about market appreciation. Meanwhile, growth would be new construction. It would be anything from a new skyscraper going up as well as a deck going onto the back of your house. And so that's just how we categorize the changes in our tax base here. On the residential side, overall, our assessments increased about 2.86%. Meanwhile, the average sales price of homes last year, what we were seeing during 2023, average sales price of homes was up about 3.8%. A lot of the story last year was constrained inventory. There just weren't too many houses out there. The houses that did sell sold still pretty quickly, about 18 days on the market. And overall, though, with volume being down and with interest rates being up, I'd say overall it became less affordable to purchase a home, especially as those mortgage rates were up. Commercial real estate, meanwhile, was down about 1.25%. There's big spread depending on which category we're talking about within the commercial real estate. Hotels were the big winner. They increased the most last year. Really what we're seeing with hotels is kind of that return to pre-pandemic levels. They certainly took a beating during the pandemic, but we're seeing those values recover. Meanwhile, office elevators, that category accounts for about 1/4 of our non-residential tax base. They were down for the 4th year straight. And I think really what we're seeing there is the continued impact of teleworking on office vacancies and therefore on office values. So this next slide is our summary of the overall budget proposal, definitely where all the numbers are, and I hope that y'all are able to see this in the back. If you picked up one of the Budget at a Glance papers, it has a lot of that information right there on that as well. So revenue is in the top half of this chart, with the total projected increase in available funding being just over $363 million. I would note that that amount includes the impact of the proposed 4-cent increase in the real estate tax rate. It also includes a proposed increase in the cigarette tax rate from the current 30 cents up to the state maximum of 40 cents. There's also a few other categories there as far as fee adjustments and revenues and impact of transfers in that are related to that overall look that we did at both ways that we could generate reductions as well as ways that we could generate some additional revenue within the agencies. And I'll talk about that just in a couple more slides. The lower half of the chart shows how we've proposed to utilize that available revenue increase. Approximately $174 million is allocated to schools. The majority of that would be for their operating needs, that as part of their operating transfer. County increases total about $178 million. The largest increase on the county side would be $148 million for employee pay and benefits. We've also recommended increases of $12 million each for debt service as well as for transportation. And then that last category on the slide, other priorities, that includes the net impact of everything else that we've recommended in the adjustment in the budget, offset by those reductions in general fund agencies. And so after all of our recommended adjustments, there's a balance of just under $4 million, $3.83 million. So this next slide gives a look at new spending in a pie chart form. And I'd note that this is just new spending. This does not show anything related to revenue. It does not show the balance of $3.83 million that's set aside for the board's consideration. But looking here, you can see that 49% of new spending is proposed to be allocated to the Fairfax County Public Schools. Another 42% is allocated to employee pay and benefits. And then transportation, which includes both Metro and our Fairfax Connector bus system, account for 4%. And debt service is 3%. And so then all other adjustments within this budget are broken out in that bar chart off to the right, along with nearly $34 million in offsetting reductions. Those account for just 2% of the overall increase in our spending this year. And I'd note as well that with some of the revenue enhancements that some of our agencies identified, it's fully offset by those. And I know it's probably small on the screen here, but hopefully you can see in the bar chart on the right some of the categories that we have there, things like safety and security, parks and environment, human services. I'll definitely have a little bit more detail as we go through to where you'll be able to see those numbers a little bit better. But now I am going to start going through some slides that kind of get into some of these categories. Once again, I'd note that what we have on these slides are kind of highlights of some of the adjustments that are included in the budget. Once again, I would point you to our advertised budget summary and the documentation that we have online that really goes through and has everything that's included in this budget. All right. So the largest net increase in our budget is for the Fairfax County Public Schools. We have proposed an increase of $165 million for the schools. Now, the schools budget, similar to ours, it does focus on employee compensation. What the schools has included in their budget is, for one, there was a state 2% increase that the state put in as of January 1 for schools. I'd note that whenever the state does any kind of salary increase, they only pay for 20%. Am I getting that right?
Yeah.
Of the overall cost. So schools, with that January 1 increase of 2%, they do need to build that into their next budget and needing to fund the rest of that for the following year. Schools has also proposed a 6% increase for their employees as of July 1. Some of the other proposals include some modifications to their retirement system, also trying to take note or really adjust for demographic changes with their enrollment. What they're seeing right now is not necessarily an overall increase in enrollment, but instead what they're seeing are changes in enrollment, especially in some of their populations that are a little bit more expensive to serve. So with all that in mind, the schools had requested in their budget an increase in the county transfer of 10.5% or $254 million. Really based on overall the budgetary challenges that we had this year and the other stresses that we had on the budget, we did not see that as something that we could fully fund. And so what was included in the advertised budget was an increase of $165 million. It is a 6.8% increase in the school operating transfer. So the largest driver on the county side of expenditure increases are employee pay and benefits, which are proposed to increase by $148 million. So this year is our first year with collective bargaining agreements in place with our two new unions. We now have unions representing our police officers as well as representing our firefighters and E911 call takers. So those contracts beginning July 1, the budget does fully fund the negotiated salary increases that are included in those, which we certainly hope will help with some of the recruitment and retention issues that we have there. For our non-represented employees, both our non-uniform general county employees as well as some of our other uniformed employees like sheriff, we have included portions of the normal pay package, things like performance increases, merit steps, longevity increases, our market rate adjustment, which is part of really like a cost of living adjustment, that was calculated at 4.1%. Again, based on some of the challenges that we have with this budget, we did not include full funding of that in this budget. What we instead have recommended is funding of 2% in the budget. Also included on this slide as part of our overall county compensation, we do have increases for employee benefits. Just under $29 million is included based on the cost of employee benefits. We do have primarily the impact there is related to our retirement systems where the investment returns were below what their targeted returns are, and so we're needing to increase our employer contribution rates for those. So the next category I'll cover is debt service. We have an increase of $20.5 million included for our required debt service payments. That does include both the county and schools portions of our debt service. This includes the impact of the bond sale that we just had this past January. This January we sold $350 million worth of bonds. We are in the process of stepping up from what was a bond sale limit each year of $300 million over a few years to get up to $400 million. That was an initiative that the Board of Supervisors and the school board worked out, really needing to make progress on some of our capital renewal projects, needing to make progress on renovations of schools, as well as our fire stations, our parks rec centers, our police stations. And so as we work through that backlog, we're really hoping that that increased bond sale limit will help out with that. This year, at the $350 million level, next year will be the first year that we sell at the $400 million level. Also on this slide, we have our table showing our upcoming bond referendum on the bottom. We do alternate between county referendum in the even years and school referenda in the odd years. And so what you'll see on the ballot this fall will be a county referendum. What'll be on that ballot would be our public safety bonds. And you can see here we have a few projects that are slated for that bond, a few fire stations as well as the Criminal Justice Academy. And then also a transportation bond, which will be for our Metro contribution for their capital construction. All right, and so talking about transportation, when we talk about Metro and Connector, those have both been kind of difficult and hot topics this year. If you were looking at the news, especially back in the fall, Metro came out saying that they had a $750 million budget deficit. There's been a lot of discussion since then about how Metro would be closing that gap. Certainly when we were developing this budget, there were a lot of unknowns about what would happen. We did not know how much of that gap would be accomplished through Metro adjusting their operations, how much the state would kick in order to help out Virginia localities. So what we had included in the budget was $10 million in increased general fund support for Metro, as well as about $27 million in support from some of our state aid and gas tax balances, getting up to an overall increase of $37 million. Since then, with the state budget kind of still working its way through, right now what is on the table would be a $65 million contribution from the state towards Metro. If that goes through, we expect what will happen is that this number that we have here for Metro, the $10 million, will be able to bring that down slightly. The other side of this slide, Fairfax Connector, our bus system, when we were developing our budget, the contractor that operates the Fairfax Connector bus system for us, which is TransDev, they were in the midst of negotiations with their drivers union. Not really knowing how that would turn out. What we had included in the budget was the $2 million that you see here, which is really a modest operating increase on the contract. Now that negotiation has worked its way through, There are employee compensation increases included for the drivers union, and so that is going to increase our cost here related to connector. We think overall what we're going to see, though, when all of this shakes out, is that the savings that we'll see on the metro side will shift down to cover what we need now on the connector side, and I think overall within this transportation area, you're going to see it stay about where it is right now. So I've talked about the reduction exercise off and on, but really it was just after we had adopted last year's budget that both based on some of the board direction, but then also looking at our outlook for this year, we realized that we really needed to go in and take a look at where we could cut. So we had challenged agencies to come up with overall 7% of their general fund budgets as reduction options. We definitely got a range of options out there. What we have proposed to implement are $34 million worth of expenditure reductions, as well as $2 million worth of revenue enhancements. We've really tried to focus in on some of these reductions that aren't going to impact agency operations, that also won't impact employees. So definitely focusing on things like efficiencies, some of the lessons learned from the pandemic, or things where we were able to better utilize technology. Also, some of the situations we're able to shift some of our costs from general fund to non-general fund sources. We do have a minimal number of either full or partial program reductions, but overall we're not expecting these reductions to impact agency operations, also not expecting employees to lose their jobs as a result of this. As I mentioned, there is $2 million in increased revenue included as part of this. We are adding some resources into our Department of Tax Administration that are going to be focused on business tax compliance. And so we think that those positions are going to generate some additional revenue by bringing more businesses into compliance. We also did a pretty comprehensive review of user fees and came up with some recommendations totaling just under $3 million. Some of those were increases in fire marshal fees and in zoning fees. I know those are things that the board is continuing to look at and decide the right path there. We also took a look at our indirect cost charges that we charge to funds other than the general fund. Some of those are self-supporting funds. They have their own revenue sources, but some of the general fund agencies like finance, human resources, procurement, my own agency, we support them, and so these indirect cost chargebacks are a way for the general fund to recoup some of that cost of the service that we're providing to them. And so that results in an increase of $500,000 available for the general fund. And so, as I noted before, these various actions that are noted on the slide, they do offset all the other priorities I'm going to go over. We're on the next 2 slides here. So some of the other adjustments that we've included in this budget, we've included $16 million for the impact of contract rate increases, as well as some other inflationary adjustments. Those contract rate increases, they're primarily related to our health and human services agencies. Those agencies do contract out for a lot of services with partners in the community, often nonprofits. We know that those nonprofits are facing kind of some of the same issues that we are. They're dealing with inflationary issues. They're dealing with some of the same recruitment and retention issues and needing to make adjustments within their employee compensation. Also included within that $16 million, there are some other inflationary adjustments, things like fuel prices going up, waste collection, the cost of IT maintenance, things like that. Housing and Human Services, we have just under $8 million in new funding allocated. Some of the highlights there, we have 5 positions to support our affordable housing program. We also have some baseline funding included for our hypothermia program. Also funding to preserve 72 early childhood slots. Those slots were originally stood up using a federal earmark. Since that's a limited term investment from the federal government, we need to put in some recurring funding in order to keep those going. Within Parks and Environment, we have just under $7 million, $3 million of that being for Park Authority. Some of the programs that'll fund include just overall parks maintenance, as well as bamboo mitigation, forestry operations where we have kind of at-risk trees on the edge of parks properties threatening other properties. We're also standing up a zero waste initiative, really trying to help the parks meet our zero waste goals. Right now, if you go out to a park, what you'll see is a trash bin. We're hoping that in the near future at all of our parks, you'll see both a trash bin and a recycling bin so that you can actually help out to choose where your waste goes. as well as the staffing and the infrastructure that's needed to make sure that those two waste streams go to their appropriate places. We also have on here some increased support for, or really changing over the support that we have for Nova Parks, their capital program. We previously provided that through our bond program. We're shifting that over to general fund to free up some of the space within our bond program, since we know we've had some limitations there. So a few other things here. Information technology, about $6 million, really looking to stabilize our network and make sure that it's ready for the things that are coming within the IT realm. Within county operations, about $3 million. I know the item that we have highlighted here is some additional support for Office of Elections. Within elections, we've seen some changes with state law regarding a number of things, including things like absentee voting. With those, it does open up more options for voters, but it's also resulted in additional expenses to actually run those elections. Within safety and security, a few things within that realm. We have some additional positions to support the Lorton Police Station, which is currently partially open. These will be some of the police civilian aides that sit at the front counter and really interact with people on the front line. We've also included some probation counselor positions within our general district court. Those people will really help out with the individuals that we're trying to divert away from incarceration into mental health treatment. So I'm nearing the end, so there's only a few slides to wrap up here. But kind of looking ahead, I didn't touch on this before, but back on March 5th, the Board of Supervisors took action to advertise the real estate tax rate. When they advertised that real estate tax rate, they opted to advertise the 4-cent increase that the advertised budget was based on. When the Board of Supervisors advertises a real estate tax rate, what they're doing is they're advertising the maximum rate that they can adopt. They can always come down from that rate. They cannot go above that rate without going back and doing a formal advertisement again and going back and potentially scheduling more public hearings. So essentially with that action on March 5th, they've set that 4-cent increase as the maximum that they could adopt as they go forward. Otherwise as well, from this point forward, kind of what my staff will be doing in addition to supporting the board as they make decisions on the budget, we're continuing to take a look at the overall environment, see what's changing. And so one of the things that we do is come back with an add-on package, which kind of has any updates that we have, and we deliver that to the board during the public hearings, which, as Supervisor Jimenez said, they are on April 16th, 17th, and 18th this year. So this year, we're using some new tools, and so we actually have more ways to provide input on the budget than we have before. We've always had a web form. We still do have a web form. We have it available in a few different languages this year. We also now have options where if you'd like to provide input, you can do so by text, you can do so by email, you can also call and leave a voicemail. So we have various options here if you'd like to provide some input. Certainly, there's always the public hearings, again, April 16th, 17th, 18th. I'll say that maybe one more time before I'm done with this. But those are the time where you can really come forward and testify before the full Board of Supervisors. We do have information here as well as on our website about how to sign up. And then obviously attending a budget town hall is also a great way to get involved, which you're all doing tonight. We're nearly through. I think we have one left this year, and then we'll be through. So then this is our budget timeline, and we are about halfway down the page right now. And so my last time saying it, the next big point on the budget calendar is those budget public hearings, April 16th through 18th. April 30th is when the budget marks up the budget. Sorry, when the board marks up the budget. That's really when I would say the board does the real work of deciding what changes they're going to be making to the budget. Then May 7th is when they formally adopt the budget. After that, the school board will have some time where they'll need to figure out what they do with their budget based on how much the board has agreed to transfer to them, as well as what the state action is and what kind of state funding flows into the schools. And after that, July 1 is when fiscal year 2025 will begin. That is it.
Well, thank you so much. And I think we are now going to move into the part of the hour where we're going to hear from any comments you may have and questions you may have, and we'll try to answer them obviously as best as possible. And, one of the things is all of the different ways that you have to give us feedback, give us kind of your thoughts on this year's budget aren't just limited to tonight. So I don't want you to think that it's tonight you get to ask a question, or if you have a question and you go home and all of a sudden you're, oh, I should have asked this, or I forgot to ask this. Feel free to email our office. We're here to serve you. We are here to hear from you. We're here to listen. So please do make sure to feel free to email us if something comes up between now and the 16th of April. Obviously on the 16th and 17th and 18th, as Mr. Hagan mentioned, is your opportunity as well, not to just come to the district town hall, but actually go to the Board of Supervisors as a whole and give testimony if you'd like. So I'll pass it over to our Chief of Staff, Amir, to hand out the microphone to anyone who might have a question. So thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Susan Goncaros, and I'm the president of the Lincolnia Senior Center Advisory Council. And I have several members here with me. And we were not notified that this was happening until just yesterday. So I apologize. I did put some formal comments into a letter that I wrote to get on the docket, I believe, for the 2016 to the budget meeting, to the supervisors meeting. But I wanted to ask if any consideration at all was given to the idea that part of our area that we serve, Lincolnia Senior Center, is slated for an increase in our membership fees to non-Fairfax members, and it's jumped from, I guess, $48 to $100, and membership fees have jumped from $48 to $75 for Fairfax County residents. This jump in this particular area, since Alexandria City is literally across the street from the senior center, and our neighborhood is divided, we are very concerned that the outreach efforts that we've been making to get seniors less isolated and move into the center to come and afford themselves of our programs is going to be seriously and drastically curtailed on this. We also are only a mile from Arlington, and we are only a mile from Falls Church. So we would like to see if there was some sort of a dispensation that can be rendered for this membership fee, and whoever created the idea that we are not profiteering from our membership fees. It is an operational budget, I believe, that goes into part to recreation. I'm not quite sure. But it's not a profiteering motive that we have. We have outreach and we have health concerns for our seniors. But we have some people who come to our center that $50 is the price, is, you know, half a week's groceries or a week's groceries. And quite honestly, and the increase for even if it's just once a year, that's $2 a week. That's a meal for a lot of people. And we try to serve the underserved, and that's what we do there. And we provide health and fitness and so forth to our members. So that kind of justification for that kind of an increase really has to come to us in writing about why. We have no clue why that kind of increase was proposed, or even who thought up the idea. But it is, especially in our neighborhood, completely irrelevant. It's just untenable, since we're so close to how many different boundaries that we serve. People come from Arlington, they come to our program. We have a very viable program, especially since the county teaching, the instructions in our centers is going to go almost to volunteers. So there's no salaries going on, no increase in salaries. So there's no increase that we can see has happened. But two things have to be taken into consideration when you consider an increase of that kind, is that most of us are on Social Security. Most of us, I'm a retired classical teacher, so I can, from Fairfax County. And I know the issues that are in our neighborhood and our borders, et cetera. So please consider that. And if you have an answer to that question about who would like to talk to me about that at this point and to seek some justification, I would be well open to your discussion.
Well, if you have a follow-up question, I'll let you ask that, and then I can answer all the questions, ma'am, if you'd like. Would you like to ask your question now, or do you want me to answer? Please answer whatever you can. Yeah, no, I just didn't know if the lady next to you had a follow-up on top of that. I wanted to answer all of it together at once.
My question is for Mr. Jimenez. Have you ever checked out the Lincoln Senior Center?
I have not, but I look forward to.
It would be to your advantage to go there before April 16th. They have an excellent program there, and you need to see what's going on. That increase from $48 to $75 is like a 36% increase, and it is way too high. I've lived in Mason District 84 years. That's where I went to elementary school, and I'm on the advisory council. So I've gone full circle, but from $48 to $75 is way too much. Thank you.
Let me take note of all of this. One, I'm going to try to address this as the questions, comments came, and if I forgot one, please feel free to speak up. But one, I'm sorry that you didn't receive an invite to this until yesterday. Let's make.
I had received it through friends, not.
Okay.
We tried 3 times to get me on the list, so that has to be corrected.
Okay. We will make sure that before you leave here today, our staff has your information and that we're able to put you on that list. We are obviously working our best at the start of month 3 to get our newsletter up and running, but that's no excuse, and we'll make sure to have you part of that by the end of the evening. So one, we'll make sure that you're aware of future events. 2, I appreciate the invitation. I will take you up on it. I will have our staff reach out to you before you leave here today, and we'll find a date that works before April 16th, and I would love to come and visit. Obviously, all the voices in Mason District and Fairfax County are extremely important to me, but obviously the voice of our senior residents are extremely important as well. So with that being said, I do not, I will absolutely consider this. I do not think, I think the fact that membership hike is too far. I think it's too high. I do believe and understand the idea that there are folks who live on a fixed income, and I understand that having that 30-something% increase is unattainable for many folks, and the services provided it's not fair. I get where you're coming from. So I do look forward to coming by the senior center. I look forward to having broad discussion with you, seeing how we can work together on this, and it will happen before April 16th. So we will move forward on that quickly with my staff. And I appreciate you all coming out tonight for raising your concerns, and we'll make sure to get you on that email list. So thank you. Does anyone on this panel have anything to add on that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you.
Thank you. The school support, which was what, 49% of your budget, I was just curious, and I've asked Mr. Hill this in the past years, about who actually audits their request for funds. Do you have outside auditors or just internal auditors? And I was just curious with regard to any kind of redundancy, any waste, anything like that, because it seems like obviously it's half your budget. And also the 84 positions that were eliminated, were any of those from the school budget? Okay, thank you.
Good to see you again.
Okay.
Let me take this.
Please.
Okay. The school's budget is provided to the county through the superintendent. The superintendent has an auditor, but I'm not sure how they work within their functions. Our Board of Supervisors provide what we call budget Q&As, questions and answers. I believe this year we've had a lot. 150 more?
Or more submitted.
Okay, so we have had 150 submissions of questions from our Board of Supervisors, Supervisor Jimenez being one, and then we go through an iterative process to ensure, one, they're not double counting from state funds. Two, when we get a request for, say, a 2% raise, that's $10 million to the state, and that's like 60 or 65 million to us. How much is that to us? 50? It's about 50 million to the Fairfax County. So if you're asking me if we audit their books, no, we do not audit their books. However, we do ask a multitude of questions to support their request. As you know, they asked for $250 million plus $4 million this year. We provided them 165 in my budget. The Board of Supervisors could change that going forward. Their total amount or total allocation is about 52%, 51% of our current budget. So, I mean, that's pretty much it. That board, they have a school board that is duly elected, and I believe everybody in this room has the ability to, like we have the ability to vote for Supervisor Jimenez, you have the ability to do the same for them. So that's the check and balance that we currently have.
I will say one interesting fact, and thank you, County Executive Hill, is that our neighboring states are spending more per pupil, meaning West Virginia and Kentucky. We're falling behind when it comes to that, and we at Fairfax County, our teachers deserve more, but we also need to make sure that Fairfax County isn't the one carrying the entire burden for that, right? We need help from our state. We need to make sure that our state representatives, our state senators are also contributing or helping to contribute to that pool so that Fairfax County itself isn't the only one carrying that full burden. Right now, as mentioned earlier, we obviously have issues with retention, we have issues with hiring, and to make sure that we are competitive, and not only as a state but as a county, we need to make sure that the funds are coming from both parts.
Yeah, I specifically didn't want to touch on the salaries. I wasn't talking about that aspect, just the support aspect.
Yes, sir.
Rather than the employees.
Yes, sir.
And the raises. So,
And you asked about the 84 positions being abolished. Those are all on the county side.
I forgot that question. I'm sorry. That's all on us.
thank you.
You're welcome, sir. Good to see you again.
We had a question online. Is there any funding within the budget for Safe Streets for All, for the Safe Streets for All program? Given that street safety is a huge need in the Mason District and Fairfax County as a whole, I think it is important that there is funding allocated in FY25 to build this program's capacity, hire more staff, and implement its recommendations.
Yeah, absolutely. And a really important question, and one that pertains very closely to Mason District. On April 16th, right around the corner, we're actually going to be looking at and voting on this very thing. So we're extremely excited to be taking that under consideration. Mr. Hagan, did you have something further to add to that?
I mean, I would just maybe tack on that certainly active transportation and safety has been one of the board's priorities. The board has a goal of $100 million towards active transportation improvements over 6 years, and so I think we're definitely seeing some improvements there.
And if you have the ability to get online to the Fairfax County .gov site /strategic plan, we have a transportation mobility dashboard that we're using to obviously make informed decisions on where we need to do updates. It's specific to Supervisor Jimenez's requests. We can see how the pedestrian safety is in certain areas, and we're going to try and enhance it so we don't have as many fatal accidents.
And just to add to that, a couple of different things, other than just talking about this issue, it's critically important that we're out in the community talking about just where is that money going, how are we using this money, what are the timelines for public transportation, public safety, pedestrian safety. And so one of the things my office is working on doing over the next several months is, we're planning a lot of different open houses, town halls, where we can bring in residents, make sure that residents are brought up to speed on a number of issues, and our next open house, our next open house, which will hopefully be in May, will be a transportation open house. And the idea is to bring both staff from Fairfax County, staff from the supervisor's office and VDOT together here in this very building and have an open house where residents of Mason District can learn more about just where some of the money's going, what the timelines are, and what are some of the best practices that we're doing here in Mason District to address both transportation issues and public safety and pedestrian safety issues as well. So we're really excited about that, and we'll be pushing that out hopefully the next month or two so that the community can come and learn more.
Thank you very much for all your hard work in representing us. These are certainly not my highest priorities. Like, I feel that pedestrian and traffic safety are more important, but just two things to bring up. Supervisor Jimenez, I don't know if you know this, but the majority of the vacuum leaf collection in Fairfax County is actually in the Mason District. We've actually done some analysis in that, and so the leaf rate is shown to go up from 12 to 19. So if I take 12 minus 19, I get 7 over 12. That's a 58% increase. We've looked at Arlington County. They gave us some data. In Arlington County, they said it costs about $34.86 per household for vacuum leaf collection. I found the City of Falls Church's total numbers, so I divided the total cost in City of Falls Church by the number of single-family homes and by the number of single-family and townhomes in the City of Falls Church, and I got somewhere between $48 and $65. If I take the 2023 $3.2 million that Fairfax County said they expended and divide it by the approximately 25,000 customers, I get about $129.66. So I scratch my head when I see that Fairfax County is potentially charging its customers 4 times as much as Arlington, and yet when you look at a map of Arlington County's leaf areas versus Fairfax County's, they're about the same. Arlington County, I've seen Arlington County's pickup. They have, like, one day I was out on the street visiting a friend, and they have a single truck with a single driver and a single hose that picks up. You know, there's a picture of Fairfax County's service on our video that the county did, and it shows a truck with a gang of about, 4 or 5 people, very inefficient. Arlington County says they use their forester and state forestry and other data to best predict when to come out and pick up leaves. Apparently Fairfax County doesn't do that. Arlington County does 2 pickups a year, and they can time it to pick it up when the leaves are on the streets because of their analytics. Fairfax County, we had 3 pickups this year. The 3rd pickup came out when there was essentially no leaves. So I'm really concerned that we're actually wasting resources and fuel and other things inefficiently for a service that's very important. And I don't know whose job it is. I would think, I guess, Director Hill, it's your job to be looking at the effectiveness and the efficiency of your own county operations and how they're serving the residents and the citizens. And these are areas in the county that are older, 1950s, very stressed leaves. And if you walk through a forest and you walk through a neighborhood like in Ravenwood Park where I live or other areas of the Mason District, it's not like a forest. And we have houses and driveways and other things that are competing with the leaves. So for having people make a comparison to say, in the forest you don't need this, I think it's showing a lack of really sensitivity and understanding to the people and the residents. And if I were the boss, I would tell the gentleman, your director of public way of services, he shouldn't be saying those kind of things because it shows a lack of understanding, a lack of sensitivity. And I've noted that the org chart, at the top of the org chart in the county is not you, you say it's the residents. So they're supposed to be serving us, and they should be doing it effectively and efficiently for things like the leaf service. Another, just a small thing, but for years we used to have our Citizens Association meetings in our local Justice High School. And we were then told when we tried to get a meeting in there a couple of years ago that we have to have $1 million in liability insurance. For us, that would cost about 10% of our annual income just to have a meeting. So I did email you, Supervisor Jimenez, your office, and I would encourage you to use your ability to ask the school budget process like some of the other supervisors had, ask some of these questions about the school and why they're doing this, especially when we pay over $1 million a year per neighborhood in taxes that actually go to the schools, you know, those kind of things. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. And before I turn it over to my colleagues to see if they have any comments, I'm going to start off with your last question first. Good news, question's already been submitted.
Thank you.
As soon as we got your email, we submitted the question. So you can check that off the box. We're looking into it, and we're asking the question. It's already been submitted to school, so that's one. Two, I mean, before I pass it over to our county executive, Mr. Hill, my stance has been and always will be that we need leaf collection. I think we can do better. I think we need to look at the process, but I really, really am going to fight strongly to keep the leaf collection. It worries me in many different regards to eliminate the leaf collection. I believe that there might be some leaf burning. I worry about what happens in the street when there are cars. I worry about what happens to families, pedestrians, when they're walking and there's cars coming and there's leaves on both sides of the street. All of those things worry me. So, and I've said this and I haven't moved since, we need leaf collection. We absolutely need it. I plan on being very, very vocal about it. Now, the process, can it be better? Yes. Can we work with our county? Yes. Can we look at timing? Can we see where we can be fixing some of these issues? Of course. But at the bottom line is we need leaf collection. And so that's bottom line. That's where I stand. And I plan on being very vocal. And I've been trying to be vocal on this issue when it's come up. I've told anyone who asks where I stand on this issue, and I will continue to do so. And I'm very aware that Mason, out of all the districts in the county, is the one most impacted by the leaf collection. So, Mr. Hill, do you have anything to add?
Well, yeah, it's an interesting thing that we have here in Fairfax County. Your numbers are pretty spot on when it comes to the amount of folks that have leaf collection. It's about 25% of Fairfax County residents. We've gone through a protracted issue with hiring people to do the leaf collection, so we have contractors essentially doing it now. We average not $162 based on your numbers. What I'm going to do is have a mayor get your email address so we can answer the actual cost per, and we'll give it to Supervisor Jimenez. I'm not saying we're as efficient as Arlington because they're a little bit more compacted.
Okay, look at our areas, though. They're the same about area.
It's not a...
Counties, they're about the same.
I can't answer my question.
Columbia is about the
Okay.
same.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll make sure to get that information to you. Thank you.
I just tried to answer the question. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Hi, I'm a teacher in Fairfax County Public Schools, and so I'm an involved union member, and so I'm concerned about the $89 million shortfall for schools. I'm also, especially because a vast majority of the amount being asked for the schools is employee compensation, so that's going to directly impact the school system's ability to attract and retain high quality educators. I'm also concerned about the MRA for county employees not being planned to be fully funded, the 4.1% not being funded only to 2%. And so, and I know it comes up every single year about how, it's the balancing act of the burden on taxpayers because we rely so heavily on real estate tax. And so, so my question to the supervisor and county executive is, what are the plans to start to diversify our revenue sources, such as the meals tax? I know it's been discussed prior, so is there a plan to move forward with the meals tax and other ways to just bring in revenue so it's not relying so heavily and causing that kind of conflict between property taxes and paying for our community services? Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for your question. I absolutely do agree that we need to be looking at different revenue streams. We need to make sure that though we hold the state accountable for needing to give more and not leave the full burden to Fairfax County, we also, as Fairfax County, need to not put all our eggs in one basket, and we need to figure out and brainstorm ways to diversify, because at the end of the day, it's up to us, right? We can request funds, we can lobby for funds to our friends in the state, but if that doesn't come through, we can't just put our arms in the air and say, oh, well. It is our responsibility, it's the board's responsibility to find new revenue streams. And so you mentioned the meals tax. There's obviously a potential hotel tax to look at. We need to make sure that we're all coming up with different ideas throughout the year. I think that some of those ideas are in the back of board members' minds. Who takes the lead on some of these issues is still up in the air, but I don't disagree with you at all. We need to be not just shaking our heads, but we need to actually be proactive when it comes to figuring out where these revenue streams come from. I know that our staff is looking at this right now. We're sitting down, we're chatting, we are trying to come up with ideas and figuring out ways that we can, at the same time, get our colleagues on the board to go with us, right? Because one vote doesn't pass any kind of new additional revenue stream. We need 6 votes in all. We don't need all the votes, but we need 6. And so making sure that we are not only selling this the right way, that we're looking at it from all angles, that we know when we're doing this and how it's going to impact the county from all sides is absolutely, it's critical. It's a critical thing to look at, and it's not an easy thing, but it's something that we need to be doing. It's something we can always be doing to say, why isn't the state funding, where they should be? Why is the burden at 80 to 20% funding on Fairfax County? And rightfully so. We can look at the JLARC study that the state put out, and we can go through that, and we can discuss that, and we can say, why are we being left behind here in Fairfax County? But at the end of the day, we need to be sitting down as supervisors, as county officials, and putting our heads together to figure out, what does this mean short term, and what does this mean long term? Because just because we want something doesn't mean we're going to be able to get it. And so we are looking at that, and so I want you to know that that's something that our office is right now, as I mentioned, currently looking at, figuring out what are other potential for revenue streams, how can we do it, how can we move forward on it, and what would it mean as far as figures to Fairfax County. Mr. Hill?
Oh, that's a great question. We work hand in hand with the Economic Development Authority led by Victor Hoskins. The 4 categories that we're really looking at are cyber, space, artificial intelligence, and quantum computing. Unbeknownst to many of us in this county, in this Northeast, next to Silicon Valley, we're the next largest employer of those types of industries. When I look at our footprint and I look at the amount of office space that is vacant, obviously the economy has changed. We do have 1.5 million square feet of office space in development. That is going to change our footprint substantially. As Supervisor Jimenez has stated, the vacant space is where we're trying to attack the problem. And once we are able to attack the problem with renovations and revitalization districts, I think we'll be in a better place. But right now, as I stated, we are still building pretty regularly in the Tysons and the 100 Mill area. Supervisor Jimenez and I are looking at trying to revitalize certain portions of Mason. One key stat, 94% of our businesses are 50 people or less in Fairfax County. Another key stat is the 6%, not the 94%, but the 6% remaining employ 67% have the 67% of the employees. So if you think about the dynamics, we really have to really hone in on small business, because small business is the lifeblood of Fairfax County.
Hi, I'm Nancy Verona, and I'd like to go back to a couple of comments by the public and then also by our panel. And one is about the revitalization here in Mason District and efficiency. I think increased efficiency and effectiveness is very important. When I think about Mason District, and I grew up here, so I'm a longtime resident, I know that in 1997, a county commission study by Hunter Interests was published. And literally, one could say that what was reported then for Seven Corners and Bailey's Crossroads is the same situation now that led to the need for a study and revitalization. So the fact that there's an interest in this area, the energy that you're bringing, Supervisor Jimenez, is extremely important. Talking about efficiency, this is something I see on a day-to-day basis, and although I know it may be small, I think it may be representative. I'm thinking, what don't I see at a large scale? So in Mason District, we see many illegal or non-code compliant activities, and one, for instance, is signage by businesses. So I have asked, I think, or suggested on many occasions, could the county send out a notice, maybe to new businesses? These are our signage regulations, with tax notifications or the regular kind of communications that might go electronically or in print to our business community, particularly in those areas like in Mason District where we see repeat violations. The comments I'm making now I have made for the last probably 12 years. Instead, we have investigators or inspectors from Department of Code Compliance come out on a complaint-driven basis, and then the inspector might come out 2 weeks later. So I think, why in the world are we operating like that when we could have, we can communicate in so many different speedy and effective and comprehensive ways. Also, with the complaint-driven arrangement, if an inspector sees a violation, they can't do anything unless a complaint was provided, say, by a member of the public, by a citizen. Well, that's ineffective. They're driving by, they're seeing something, and maybe they've seen that time and time again. So I know that we have hardworking and dedicated county employees. I also have a sense that at least some of them, or I know that some of them, are not able to perform as effectively, as cost efficiently for the county and for the citizens that they are representing.
You will hear no argument from me on that. I have talked, I think I was talking about it this afternoon with some of our staff. When I drive around, it is such a pain to see flashing lights, lights on buildings that aren't working, you know, signage that's just not up to date. And how can we fix this? I mean, there's two ways, right? And I think that we need to try both avenues at once. I think one is, as you mentioned, figuring out who the owner is and reaching out to them and having a conversation. I think that that would work actually more times than one might think. And it's this idea of building bridges and not tearing them down, and how you confront the situation. And I think that it won't work every time, but if there's 5 signs and you can even get 2 of them fixed by just having a conversation with the owner, isn't that worth that time? Isn't that worth our time to try? So I do agree with that. I do get very frustrated and know how hard the county works and how many requests our Office of Code Compliance gets throughout Fairfax County on this issue. So, you know, it's, again, as you said, sometimes it's not not the fault of the staff, sometimes it's how much staff is able to do this, how much staff are set to work per district, et cetera. And so I would say that if there are specific code compliance issues that you have, we do have a staffer who's assigned to do code compliance in our office. I think that if you can reach out to Amir and give him your information, As you see things, do not hesitate to reach out to us. We will do our best to try to push as much as we can to try to make sure that those items and those issues are resolved. But it is an issue, and it's something that gets to me whenever I'm driving, that and boarded up stores and lots that have caught fire. Those are all things that I drive by every day, and I shake my head every day, just like most people. Now, it's about working and making sure that we're doing it through the right system, but also making sure that we do have offices like ours who are here to serve you that can hopefully help push and try to get some of this fixed. So I do fully understand where you're coming from. Please do reach out to us. We're happy to have additional conversations. And if you do see things, sometimes we aren't able to see everything. So if you do see something, please let us know. Brian?
It is complaint-driven, and it's also driven by the Department of Codes compliance. We have Operation Stream Shield in place now. Typically, the Sheriff's Office was responsible for dealing with that. She, over the last couple years, has not had the population in the jail, nor has she had the staff to do it. So the county board, before Supervisor Jimenez came on to the county board, enacted Operation Stream Shield. So they do have a team that now is going through the county looking for illegal signs on the roads. So I have.
Thank you.
Always, brother.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Kiotavang Salaya. I'm a Fairfax County employee. Just want to talk about the MRA raise for our employees. The market adjustment rate is fixed at 4.1%, but we're only giving 2% for the raise. So I asked that the board consider that in we talked about like retaining our workers force. So a lot of my fellow workers, what they do is they go to other localities to find higher pay and get more benefits than we can, and that's how we're losing our workers. So in order to retain more workers and stay in Fairfax County, live in Fairfax County, I think if we can raise up the market adjustment rates for the county to full fund, then I think county employee will stay more and be more dedicated, to live here and stay here and work here for Fairfax County.
I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate your comment. Absolutely something we'll take into consideration between now and as the budget rolls forward. So thank you for taking time out of your evening to come out here and share your opinion. Feel free to obviously write us a letter that we can, yeah, thank you very much.
I will do that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Whitney Redding, and I'm with Friends of Homes Run. And we take a watershed approach to stewardship. We try to connect neighbors to nature, So if you're in Homes Run, to look up our website. So one of the things I do is tree rescuing, and that means, the many bajillions of trees that are currently being strangled by, non-native vines and things like that. So I think this year so far I've done maybe 12 different such events, and we're 3 months in, and I've had like 200 and 300 hours of, maybe 100 different volunteers. So I've been doing it in multiple parks up and down the watershed, and that's just by way of saying, okay, so I'm trying to do my part, right? The job is bigger than any of us, the government, the businesses, the property owners, could ever handle alone. It has to be partnership. So thing number one, I'm incredibly grateful that last year the Board of Supervisors seemed to listen and understand that there needs to be a better revenue model for the Park Authority that enables natural resources to not get such short shrift, and also allows for a more equitable revenue model So, thank you. So the other piece of it, though, is this problem, even in this tight budget year, and we're grateful for all that, it's not going to go away. So my hope is that there can be some budget guidance going into the following years, and I know that the budget's not going to be any easier. So it's going to take a great deal of coordination among all the different, I've done this work in in the land next to, places of worship and private neighborhood pools. I hear the same themes from people over and over. What is happening to the trees? And because I do all this environmental work, and I know you are environmentally invited, I know, that all our trees are coming due. They were all planted, after the 19th century, and they're all coming due at once. And a lot of them are not making it, even as far as their life could otherwise handle. And because of the monoculture on the ground, the coverage by so many other, ground covering, non-natives, that means that the forest cannot regenerate. So this is in every yard and on every right of way. I think I've made my point, right? Okay, thank you very much. Oh, and I echo what Mark was saying, wearing my other hat as the Civic Association leader for Raymondale, that we can't afford to meet anymore in person, which is okay for those of us who do Zoom, but it's not okay for those who cannot easily do Zoom. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, and yes. This is an important issue. One thing, and we can talk about this afterwards quickly, but there are a couple of groups who are working on tree planting, specifically in Mason. So maybe we should get together and talk a little bit about that. The park department and myself have been in constant conversation. We have our park appointee here tonight, Mr. Kendall. Thank you for your service, sir. So we have been in communication. I am aware of the issues. I am aware of the funding, and we're going to be working with Ms. Cole to figure out how we can continue to look at the long-term funding of parks in Fairfax County, and specifically in Mason. And I do know that one of the things that I will be trying to push over the years is, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't know this until I became a supervisor, is that there is no weekend park pickup of trash. And that's a big problem. My mouth dropped when I found that out. And so it is one of my priorities over the next couple of years to try to fix that. I think that accessibility is key, but if those who we are inviting into public spaces don't have a clean place to go, I think that that's upon us, and that's a responsibility that we need to own up to make sure that our parks stay and are clean. With that, I'm absolutely happy to talk a little bit about some of the organizations that are looking to do some of the tree planting after this meeting, and am very in tune with the requests of the parks. Mr. Kendall reaches out to our office quite frequently and updates us and gives us, a lot of insight into where we need to be looking at funding and what's happening with the funding. And so, as always, we look at our appointees throughout Mason District to help be our eyes and ears and have the knowledgeable background to help best give us and keep us up to date on things happening throughout the Fairfax County and Mason District.
Thank you. I'm Fran Milhauser from the Library Board, and I've heard from two voices that need a place to meet. And the library there are 3 libraries in Mason District that have meeting rooms that are available for free with no insurance deposit. The only requirement is that your meeting is open to the public, but I don't think that's a problem. So contact one of our libraries to meet for free.
Fran, thank you for that. Obviously, Fran, our library appointee, who we're very grateful for. I will say this space always open to the public if you need. We have our office scheduler who helps bring events here. So if you do need space, this is an open space to everyone. So don't forget about that. But thank you, Fran, for that. Can I say one quick thing, Whitney, about the environmental question that you brought up that just kind of led me to something. just really quickly, just so you know, I have this idea. This idea is to bring everyone under the tent, to activate our community. The more our community is invested, the better off it is for all of us. I've always said I can't do this work alone. I need the help of nonprofits, the county staff, leaders, experts right in our backyard. And it's because of that we instituted an art task force that we've picked up, and we're moving forward, looking at murals and all of these other great things, art for children. And so I just want to let you know, kind of as a heads up, that on Earth Day we'll be instituting an environmental task force here in Mason District to look at both low-hanging fruit and bigger projects so that we can be a hub of innovation here in Mason District. And if you're interested, we'd love to have you on that and to not only give us your guidance, expertise, but also listen to some of the local experts here in Mason District that come from the White House, that come from CEQ, that are coming from all the departments that bring their wealth of knowledge so that we can make sure that we're shining as much as I know we can here in Mason District.
We have time for one more question. Is there?
I have a question about school employee salaries. So currently you have 26 employees for the Fairfax County Public School System making over $200,000 a year. 6 of those make over $250,000. The superintendent makes over $400,000 a year. With a 6% increase, you will almost double the amount of employees that make over $250,000 of that list. And I'm assuming the list of employees making over $200,000 a year will increase, along with the superintendent's salary being increased to over $432,000 a year, when you're paying an entry-level teacher less than $60,000 a year. I challenge any of you to survive in Fairfax County, living in Fairfax County on only $60,000 a year. And it's going to be less than that because they're paying taxes, and they're paying the taxes that you're increasing. And I challenge you to tell me how a teacher is supposed to make it.
Thank you for your question. That's a fantastic point. And it's not just teachers, though. We obviously are talking about teachers here. I have traveled and gone to many of our firehouses. I've talked with our police officers, and one of the questions that I ask nowadays for example, when I go to a firehouse, I look at the men and women who are in front of me and I say, how many of you live here? And by that I mean here in Mason District or Fairfax County. Typically, I get about the answer of one. One person raises their hand. And then I ask, number 2, I ask, well, who's living the farthest? And the other day I was in Annandale, and the farthest, someone said Delaware. They're traveling from Delaware to come here. That's a problem. And what we need to do is we need to be looking at solutions to that, because how can we bring in and retain talent when they're traveling from Delaware? We need to, and we are, and my staff is looking at potential not only solutions around workforce housing and stipends, but it is something that we need to look at today. We can't wait for tomorrow. We can't wait for there to be a next big chunk of retirees, and then we aren't catching up when it comes to bringing in and recruiting, and we can't wait for some of our most valued teachers to go to a different county. We need to make sure that we're retaining them here in Fairfax County, where they belong, where they're teaching our amazing students, and we need to make sure that they feel as valued as they should be. It's a quality of life issue. You don't have much of a quality of life issue if, one, you're consistently worried about how to pay rent. It's not a quality of life when you're traveling an hour and a half back and forth. So that is something we're looking at. We're taking it very seriously. It's all of our Fairfax County workers. It's our teachers. It's our EMS, our firefighters, our police. It's not just one. We need to be making sure that we are looking after and taking care here in Fairfax all of the amazing workers that help make our community and our quality of life as high as it is. Please.
So I just wanted to follow up with what you said. So the question I guess I have is, when you did your 150 Q&As for the school system, did you get down to the fidelity of, hey, I give 6% increase to these high-paid administrators? Was there any thought to changing that model a little bit so that, I mean, they're earning more than the median income in Fairfax County. So is it necessary that they get the 6% and we give more to the teachers? Did we ask that question?
So just to be 2 points to clarify, and thank you very much for your question. Okay. One, it was a proposed budget, so nothing has passed. The 6% has not been decided on. And two, we are still, as of today, in the midst of formulating and continuing to look at what questions will be asked between now and May 7th when the budget is passed. So the questions still continue. No decisions have been made, so we have not said that 6% is where we're going to stay. That was the proposed budget that was put out by Mr. Hill, but 6% could change. It could be 2, it could be 3. Someone could say the 6% is too high, for example, and why aren't we looking at different components when it comes to quality of life of teachers? You know, pay raise is just one piece of the puzzle. There could be other things that we either aren't looking at or haven't looked at. So I just want to make it clear that that 6% isn't something that we have finalized yet.
I just feel like that's quite high. We have quite a highly paid administration for our school system. Perhaps it compares with the rest of the country, but it just seems. I used to be a federal employee, and I know what senior executives make, and I know what the president of the United States makes, and we're doing pretty darn. Some of these administrators are pretty high. So I just wonder when you did your Q&A, if you delved a little bit into that kind of conversation, because there's the real needs of the school need to be met, and then not necessarily all the wants, and we need to be affordable.
I appreciate your comment, Mr. Hill.
Yes, when the Board of Supervisors effectively approves their budget on May 7th, the school district will then have to react to what the board does on the 7th. So as Supervisor Jimenez said, 6% is out there, but once the Board of Supervisors takes action on the 7th, the school district's going to have to react to what the Board of Supervisors has provided. So I don't know where it's going to land, but once the supervisors react and take action on their budget, I don't know the date, Phil, of when the school budget. I think it's a week after that. Then you'll hear
May 23rd is
May
when they
23rd.
adopt.
May 23rd. Thank you.
I'll break away from my written comments for just a quick second and just say thank you. I just want to thank all of you for coming out. All of you took time out of your evening to ask questions. I encourage you to come out. I encourage you to reach out to our office. As I've mentioned many times, our office is here to serve you. We may not always have the exact same opinion in your views, but we are here to listen. We are here to hear you. We are here to try to work with you because at the end of the day, we're here for the right reasons, which is our community. So I just want to say thank you for coming out tonight. Now my official comments. Thank you all for joining us tonight, for providing me with the feedback, input, and concerns. My staff have been keeping track of your comments as we take into account everything that we have heard since late February and that we will hear through the adoption of the budget. On your seats were handouts on how to contact my office. I encourage you to stay in touch and reach out to my staff, and if there's anything we may be able to do to assist with you, we'd love to share and hear your comments and concerns. Finally, I'd like to thank County Executive Mr. Hill and Director Hagan for being here with me tonight. Please stay safe, and we look forward to hearing from you again soon. Thank you.